Morning all, it's Nick obviously. I'm about to go on a call with my endocrinologist, aka my menopause consultant, for my periodic update. It is 4 months since I spoke to him and we reviewed my treatment plan. I'm 50 years old I'm 50 years old, 51 next month for those of you that don't know, although I know most of you who watch this probably do know the whole saga. And I think this is my 5th year in the menopause, perimenopause, I don't know, whatever we want to call it. And there's a few things I want to share. One is a list that I write down to discuss with him. And we actually rate them. We've got into a little routine. And we go through all of these different things and we rate them in terms of how I'm feeling. And then once I've done that, my doctor is then able to also look at my blood results and all of the range of things that have been tested and start to join the dots so that we can start to work out where the imbalances may be. And there's 2 things that have sprung to my mind this morning that I thought were important points to make, not only to women going through the menopause, but to any woman, because hormones are with us from a very, very early age, and hormone imbalances can play a huge role from the minute they start developing in us. Also, to all of the partners of those women who may at times struggle to be able to understand and know how best to support women when they really are in the throes of some of the really debilitating menopausal symptoms. And I'm going to share my list, which I think might resonate with a lot of people. But also the big thing that's dawned on me as I was sat going through it and just reflecting on how I'm feeling is I am increasingly starting to struggle to know where to draw the line between which of my symptoms are because I'm going through the menopause and which of them are because life is increasingly difficult and challenging. And it's full of drama, it's full of distractions, it's full of a lot of toxicity, struggling with my words, optical illusions, pressures. And a big thing that I'm really observing and I am experiencing at a really deep level, I'm really struggling with, is a lot of my own traumas from the past are deeply, deeply triggered, because they weren't dealt with at the time, because we're not given an emotional education. We kind of suck it up and we pave over the cracks and we just hope that those cracks are going to go away. And I've often talked about this with the menopause. It definitely whacks open those cracks. But I'm increasingly struggling to find the line between which is something that is part of the menopause and therefore is part of a treatment plan, for want of a better name, and which of it is actually much more to do with my mental and emotional health and is something that I personally do deal with through a combination of counselling, very deep spiritual beliefs, and you know, some really good support networks where I can process it. And I think the line is becoming blurry, because I think life is getting harder. And I think because it's getting harder, there are more and more of us. There are more and more broken people, and broken people often break other people. And there are more and more of us with traumas that have been left to fester, and it sometimes feels so overwhelming, and that it's getting past a tipping point. And that is the big conundrum. And actually the conversation I'm going to have with my menopause consultant in a bit is I'm not sure where the line is. I'm not sure which of some of my symptoms are actually because of the menopause and which of them are actually because actually life's really fucking hard. And sometimes we've got quite a lot of shit that has just not been dealt with because we've never been given the tools or support to deal with it. Anyway, so the list, because I'm already 4.5 minutes in, look, and I haven't even got to the list. Weight. Where's my weight? It's not great at the minute. It's on the up. I am insulin resistant, but some insulin resistant meds. But insulin resistant doesn't mean I'm a diabetic. So there's two different things, because insulin's our biggest hormone. Generally, I mean, I'm not medically qualified, so I'm only talking from my own experience and my own things that I've learnt from seeing my consultant. My understanding is that diabetics are also insulin resistant, but you can be insulin resistant without being a diabetic. So I'm not a diabetic. I'm insulin resistant, which means my insulin doesn't work quite as well as it should do, which can lead to increased weight, increased fluid retention, really, really severe sugar cravings. Some of the medication my body has got used to, so it just ignores. Some of the new medications that have been brought out to deal with it actually just make me feel really nauseous and not very nice, and aren't great for my quality of life. So my weight is on the up, so that is something that we need to discuss. And part of that discussion, there is also a blurry line here, because I'm 51 next month. It's not biologically normal for me to be the same size I was when I was 21. So some of my weight is a natural increase. It's biologically required in order to help my body to protect my bones. It's part of the process of aging. And I just need to know where the line is between just accepting the aging process and the fact that, you know, your weight and the shape of your body and so many things change as you get older, and which of it is because actually my insulin's being a bit naughty, and, you know, how far do we go in controlling that? Point one. And I think insulin gets missed a lot with menopausal women, in my humble opinion. Point two, always the tiredness, exhaustion, tiredness, which goes hand in hand with body aches, particularly shoulder and lower back ache. And at the minute, I am constantly exhausted. The tiredness is quite significant. But interestingly, I'm not sleeping very well. So even though I'm really tired and my body aches, I'm not really sleeping particularly well. So that's an interesting concept to discuss. Hair, my hair. So so I don't know if you can see, but I've always had quite long and very fine hair. I've been very lucky with my hair. Always not had to blow dry it or straighten it or anything. It's just fine and long, and it just breaks. It's just frizzy and it just breaks. And I'm spending a fortune on shampoos and supplements and all kinds of things. And we know that some of the issue that I've had with my hair is because we got a bit too carried away with the level of testosterone, but it still hasn't righted itself. So it's a discussion because it's telling me something. And yes, it is a vanity thing, because I've always really liked my hair and I haven't had to do much to have nice hair. I've been very lucky. And maybe it's not something I'm ready to let go of yet. Who knows? But anyway, it's a discussion. Big one here, hormonal depression and crashes. And when the hormonal depression comes, it is so bad. It's a complete loss of perspective. That my reality becomes different, and it doesn't matter what evidence you put in front of me. It doesn't matter what you tell me. My brain actually tells me something else, and I can't believe anything else. And it tells me some really deep, dark, difficult stuff. It's really traumatic. And these periods of hormonal depression come when my estrogen drops too low. So there's like levels for me in estrogen. So there's kind of one level, which is if it's too high, then actually that was also part of the problem with my hair. It was too high, and it can have its own set of issues. If it's slightly too low, or medium too low, that's definitely where I'm feeling tired and the body ache and so forth. If it is just not, there's just not enough there, you know, it's like the petrol has run out of the car and it's just come to a stop, that's when I get what I call a crash, or is also known as hormonal depression, not talked about enough. And it is like my world becomes something else, and that I have no self-esteem, no self-confidence. I've talked about this in other blogs. I feel so down, so sad. I can't even just, I'm not depressed now like that. I'm not in the middle of a crash, but thinking about how it makes me feel actually brings tears to my eyes, because I am so sad and feel of, you know, just the only thing that goes around in my head again and again and again is, what is the point of me I have no point, and I can only see all of the reasons why I am of no value. And actually, I can absolutely see, I can look over the edge when people start talking about suicidal thoughts, because you can get to a place when you start thinking, well, should I even be here? Should I even exist? And that's what brings tears to my eyes. The fact that this is what hormonal depression can do. Now, I'm not even in hormonal depression. I'm not crashing at the minute. But just the memory is so stark in my mind of how it feels, because I've had a few of these episodes over the past few months, which I know means we need to discuss my estrogen level today, because I know it's not good. And I think that is a really, really important point that needs to be picked up with menopausal women, because I am convinced it's linked to the rise in suicide rates in middle-aged women. The other big thing is traumatic responses. So I think, I don't know anybody, I'm sure all of us in one form or another, to a greater or lesser extent, have traumas in our life from when we were younger. And it's not just about when we're younger, it's all the way through. It's part of the human condition, but it's part of the human experience. And we're not taught, well, I certainly didn't live in a world, my generation wasn't taught to have what I would call an emotional education, which is to really be able to, process and understand our pain and feelings and what's happening to us. And even now, I still don't really think we have the right systems in place at all, unless you're lucky enough to be able to pay for it and find some really good counsellors and people, which, you know what, I am blessed enough, but that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right. And I didn't used to be blessed enough, and I didn't used to have any money, and I didn't, I wasn't born with great wealth or anything like that. So I do know what it's like to really struggle. So I have great empathy and a great passion for the fact that there are just certain things in life that should be classless and not dictated by money. And certainly our health, whether it be physical or mental, and our education and our care. I could go on. Sorry, I'm going off into a political rant now, aren't I? But anyway, traumatic responses, and I have definitely been triggered and has some really significant traumatic responses of late, and I think it is definitely linked with levels of estrogen. And I think there's something happens neurologically in our brain where we just do not have the cognitive coping mechanisms to rationalize or put the boundaries or perspective in place, so they become so overwhelming, these deep-seated traumas. And they're like infected wounds that need cleaning out. And a lot of us just don't have the tools or the knowledge or the consciousness to even know that. But I do think that's a really big part of the menopause. Anxiety, rage. I mean, anxiety is always there, really. It's always just bumbling along. And again, there's a really blurry line between, am I anxious because I'm in the menopause, or because am I anxious because, you know what, there's a lot in life to be fucking anxious about. Rage, sometimes the rage, the injustice, the unfairness of stuff just becomes overwhelming. Again, I'm sure neurologically linked with just not having the perspective filters in place, really. Brain fog and motivation and engagement with life in general. So that is my list. And I think it's all become a bit wrapped up. But I think what is really interesting, and the discussion I'm going to have is, and this is why the menopause requires its specialists. I absolutely think every single woman should have access to menopause specialists. And it is not just about medical interventions. From my perspective, it's also about the emotional and the mental interventions, because it brings up all kinds of things. There are physical things that happen to us, but there are also a lot of traumatic and mental and emotional support that we need. And I think that there is a real balancing act here. And I have to be careful that I don't blame things on my menopause, which are actually not going to be resolved by a medication plan by my menopause consultant. They're actually deep-seated issues or triggers or traumas or issues that I have, that I actually need to have the right counselling and support and emotional tools to be able to deal with. And that's actually really at the heart of my conversation with my menopause consultant today, is where is that line? And I don't think he'll know. This is this is, a lot of this is a precedence. A lot of this is treading new ground, because, you know, we're only just starting to get a handle on the menopause. But for me, the menopause is almost like a catalyst that is breaking open some of our, I can't think of the word, brain fog, can't think of the word, acquiesce, putting up with things in life that have never been right. They've never been right. It's never been okay. You know, some of the stuff that happened to me when I was younger was never okay. It wasn't okay then, it isn't okay now. But you know, as a society, we don't have the tools and structures in place to be able to help us process it. And I think one of the things the menopause does, and that can be an incredibly healthy thing, is it cracks it open. But it's a tricky one, and I think it's going to be an interesting conversation today to try and weave a path forward that says which of those things are being amplified or caused by my biological needs in the menopause, and which of those things actually need to be dealt with through a non-medicalized path, whether that be lifestyle. You know, everybody has different ways. You know, some people have religion, some people have routines, some people have spirituality, you know, some people have a particular hobby or whatever it is. But it has to be this holistic approach, which is, you know, it's that mind and that body and that soul for me. And we are treading, you know, the untrodden path, really. And we talk about the menopause all the time. And there's a lot of, I'm very lucky in that I have a really fantastic consultant who, you know, always makes the time for us to have these exploratory discussions. Because whenever we see something medical, we just think they're going to know the answer, right? And the medical people can just make everything all right for us. And actually, they can make some of it all right. But actually, some of it needs a more holistic approach. And I'm not sure we've quite got to the root cause of that. Or I have the answer for that myself. If I did, I wouldn't have this list, and I wouldn't have some of the symptoms and some of the things that I've been going through of late. So it will be interesting. And I hope that's of help to other women and partners of those women who are going through equally difficult stages. Just to give you some insight into the fact that I think this is a work in progress, and we're really only at the tip of the iceberg in understanding what the menopause really means. And I don't just think it is the female transitioning to a crone phase. I think it's something far bigger than that, actually. And I think it's cracking open the fact that there is just becoming a level of impatience and not impatience, that's the wrong word. We're full to capacity with putting up with a lot of things in life, such as the distractions, the anxiety, the pressure, all kinds of things, which actually we're just not built to put up with. Anyway, I will stop. Hope it's of help. All the best. Lots of love.